the mud-splattered face staring back from the recruitment photo bore no resemblance to the woman who would later become a legend. At 18, Maya Chun looked like she'd been picked up from the wrong side of a truck stopped thin as a rail, eyes that had seen too much, and a defiant smirk that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Nobody expected her to last a week at Fort Riverside's elite training program. Not the drill sergeants, not her fellow recruits, and certainly not Maya herself. But sometimes the most unlikely warriors emerge from the most broken places. This is the story of how a girl they called Nobody became Iron Eagle. The bus wheezed to a stop at the gates of Fort Riverside on a scorching Tuesday morning in August. Maya Chun pressed her face against the grimy window, watching as perfectly pressed uniforms marched in formation across the parade grounds. Her stomach churned, not from the 6-hour ride through backwoods Virginia, but from the creeping realization that she'd made a colossal mistake. The other recruits filing off the bus looked like they'd been carved from marble. There was Jessica Walsh, a former college track star whose legs seemed to go on forever. Behind her strutted Marcus Thompson, built like a linebacker with a jaw that could crack walnuts. Then came the twins, Sarah and Rachel Morrison, who moved with the synchronized precision of dancers. Maya grabbed her duffel bag, a sorry thing held together with duct tape and prayer, and shuffled toward the exit. At 5'4" and barely scraping 120 pounds, she looked like a strong wind might blow her back to the Kentucky holler she'd crawled out of. "Move it, recruit." Drill Sergeant Rodriguez's voice cut through the humid air like a chainsaw. "This ain't summer camp." The next 3 hours blurred together in a haze of paperwork, medical checks, and uniform distribution. Maya found herself standing in line behind a mountain of a man named Tyler Brooks, who kept glancing back at her with barely concealed amusement. "You sure you're in the right place, little girl?" Tyler whispered during the endless wait for gear assignment. "This is the Army's most exclusive training program, not Girl Scout camp." Maya bit back her first instinct, which involved suggesting Tyler perform an anatomically impossible act. Instead, she fixed him with the same dead-eyed stare that had kept her alive in foster homes and juvenile facilities across 3 states. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she said quietly. Tyler's laugh was anything but quiet. It echoed off the barracks walls and drew the attention of half the recruits in line. "Right, well, when you wash out tomorrow, try the Navy. I hear they have lower standards." The comment rippled through the group, generating snickers and whispered conversations. Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her mouth shut. She'd learned long ago that words were just noise. What mattered was what you could prove when the talking stopped. Sergeant First Class Patricia Hawkins emerged from the supply room carrying a clipboard thick enough to stop a bullet. At 45, she moved with the coiled efficiency of someone who'd spent 2 decades turning civilians into soldiers. Her gray eyes swept over the assembled recruits like a hawk surveying prey. "Listen up, future failures," Hawkins announced. "You think you're special because you made it through the selection process. You think you're tough because you survived basic training. Let me enlighten you, you're nothing. You're less than nothing. You're the raw material we might, if we're feeling charitable and you're feeling lucky, shape into something resembling a soldier." Her gaze stopped on Maya, lingering for a moment that stretched into eternity. "Some of you will quit before dinner. Some will last a week. The lucky ones will make it to month 2 before they realize they're not cut out for this life. And a precious few, maybe 1 or 2, will survive the full program." Maya shifted her weight, feeling the weight of every stare in the room. She knew what they were thinking. The scrawny girl from nowhere didn't belong here. Hell, maybe they were right. The barracks assignment came next. Maya found herself in Bay 7 with 11 other female recruits, their bunks arranged in perfect rows that would soon become the epicenter of countless inspections. arguments, and sleepless nights. Her assigned spot was the bottom bunk in the far corner, what the others quickly dubbed nobody's corner. As evening fell and the recruits settled into their new reality, Maya lay on her thin mattress listening to the whispered conversations around her. Jessica Walsh was discussing her marathon times with Amanda Foster, a former gymnast from California. The Morrison twins were comparing notes about their fathers, both career military officers. Even the quieter recruits seemed to have impressive backgrounds: college degrees, athletic scholarships, family connections. Maya stared at the metal springs above her head and wondered what the hell she was doing here. Her own background was a patchwork of group homes, petty theft charges, and a high school diploma earned through sheer stubbornness rather than any particular intelligence. The Army recruiter who'd found her working the night shift at a truck stop diner had talked about untapped potential and second chances, but those words felt hollow now. The first real test came at 0430 the next morning, when Sergeant Hawkins burst through the barracks doors with all the subtlety of a nuclear explosion. "Rise and shine, precious snowflakes. You have exactly 4 minutes to be standing in formation outside this building, or you'll be doing push-ups until Christmas." What followed was pure chaos. Recruits stumbled over each other in the dark, grabbing gear and struggling into uniforms. Maya moved with practiced efficiency. Years of pride on departures from various institutions had taught her to dress quickly and travel light. She was the third person outside, behind only the Morrison twins, who apparently had been practicing military formation since they could walk. The rest of the group trickled out over the next several minutes, with Tyler Brooks bringing up the rear, still buttoning his shirt. "Pathetic," Hawkins announced once everyone had assembled in something resembling a formation. "Absolutely pathetic." "Chun," Maya's heart stopped. "Yes, Sergeant," front and center recruit. Maya jogged to the front of the formation, her mind racing through every possible infraction she might have committed in the past 12 hours. Had she made her bunk wrong? Forgotten some piece of equipment? Said something out of turn? Hawkins circled her like a predator studying wounded prey. "Tell me, Chun, what makes you think you belong here?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could feel the eyes of every recruit boring into her back. This was it, the moment that would define everything that came after. "I don't know if I belong here, Sergeant," Maya said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "But I know I'm not leaving until I find out." Hawkins's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Approval? Surprise? Maya couldn't tell. "Interesting answer, Chun. We'll see if you're still singing that tune after today's exercises. Formation, fall out. First meal formation in 30 minutes. Don't be late, or you'll be eating my boot for breakfast." The mess hall was a cacophony of clattering trays and nervous conversation. Maya found herself sitting alone at the end of a long table, mechanically spooning scrambled eggs into her mouth while around her, the other recruits bonded over shared experiences she couldn't relate to. "Mind if I sit?" The voice belonged to David Park, a soft-spoken recruit from Oregon who'd been a forest ranger before enlisting. Unlike most of the others, he didn't seem to be trying to prove anything. Maya gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Free country." David sat down and began eating in companionable silence. After a few minutes, he looked up. "You know, my grandfather used to say that the quietest person in the room is usually the most dangerous." "Your grandfather sounds like a smart man." He was. Survived 3 tours in Vietnam. Came home and built a construction business from nothing. Never talked much about the war, but he had this way of seeing things other people missed. David paused, studying Maya's face. "I get the feeling you see things too." Before Maya could respond, the peace was shattered by Tyler Brooks's booming voice from 3 tables over. "Hey, nobody. You planning to eat that? Or are you too scared it might give you muscles?" The comment drew laughter from his table and curious stares from throughout the mess hall. Maya set down her fork and looked across the room at Tyler, who was grinning like he'd just told the funniest joke in military history. "Thanks for the concern, Brooks," Maya called back, her voice carrying clearly across the sudden quiet. "But I learned a long time ago not to take nutrition advice from people who obviously eat with their feet." The silence that followed was deafening. Then David Park snorted, trying to suppress a laugh. Within seconds, half the mess hall was either chuckling or staring in shock. Tyler's face went through several interesting color changes before settling on an angry red. Sergeant Hawkins appeared at Maya's shoulder like a dark cloud. Well, looks like nobody found her voice. Let's see if she can find her stamina. Chun, Brooks, you're on KP duty for the next week. Maybe washing dishes together will help you work out your creative differences." As Hawkins walked away, Maya caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. In the far corner of the mess hall, a figure in dress uniform sat alone at a small table, watching the proceedings with the intense focus of a chess master studying the board. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The nameplate on his chest read Morrison, General Morrison, the legendary commander, who'd turned Fort Riverside from a backwater training facility into the Army's premier elite program. He was older than Maya had expected, probably in his 60s, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. For just a moment, their gazes met across the crowded mess hall. The general's expression was unreadable, but Maya felt like she was being evaluated, measured, judged. Then he returned to his breakfast, and the moment passed. The morning's physical training session was designed to separate the wheat from the chaff. A 5-mile run through the Virginia hills, followed by an obstacle course that looked like it had been designed by someone with a grudge against the human body. Maya had always been fast. Years of running from trouble had honed her legs into efficient machines. What she lacked in size, she made up for in endurance and pure stubbornness. While bigger recruits struggled with the heat and distance, she found her rhythm and held it. The obstacle course was a different story. Rope climbs, wall scrambles, and cargo net crawls all favored size and upper body strength, areas where Maya was at a significant disadvantage. She watched in frustration as Jessica Walsh glided over obstacles that left Maya gasping and struggling, but Maya had learned something. In her 18 years of fighting for survival, you don't have to be the strongest or the fastest. You just have to refuse to quit. When Tyler Brooks lapped her on the rope climb, laughing as he passed, Maya gritted her teeth and kept climbing. When she slipped and fell from the cargo net, skinning her knees raw, she got up and tried again. When her arms screamed in protest during the monkey bars, she told them to shut up and kept swinging. By the end of the session, Maya was dead last in every category except one. She was still standing when 3 other recruits had been carried off to the medical station. As the survivors limped back toward the barracks, Maya found herself walking beside David Park, who was sporting an impressive collection of bruises and a split lip. "Rough morning," he observed. "Could have been worse," Maya replied, though she wasn't sure how. "You know what I noticed out there?" David continued. "Every time someone bigger than you tried to intimidate you, you got more determined. Every time you failed at something, you came back harder. That's not normal, Chun. Most people break when you push them that hard." Maya considered this. "Maybe. I'm already broken. Maybe this is just what the pieces look like when they try to put themselves back together." David gave her a look that was equal parts respect and concern. "My grandfather had another saying, the blade that bends doesn't break, but the blade that won't bend becomes stronger than steel. I think you might be the second kind." That evening, as Maya lay in her bunk nursing her collection of scrapes and bruises, she reflected on her first full day at Fort Riverside. She was tired, sore, and more challenged than she'd ever been in her life. The other recruits still looked at her like she was an amusing curiosity at best. a liability at worst, but something had changed during that obstacle course. Not in how others saw her, that would take time. The change was in how she saw herself. For the first time in her life, Maya Chun wasn't running away from something. She was running toward it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail, new chances to prove herself. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her smile. The second week at Fort Riverside brought a new kind of hell. Advanced combat simulations replaced basic physical training, and the pressure ratcheted up exponentially. Maya discovered that surviving the initial hazing was just the appetizer. The real test was whether you could function as part of a team when everything went wrong. The trouble started during urban warfare exercises in the mock city they called Little Baghdad. Constructed from shipping containers and plywood, it was designed to simulate the chaos of urban combat with smoke machines, flashbang simulators, and instructors playing hostile civilians. Maya's squad was tasked with clearing a 3-story building while extracting a high-value target. Simple enough in theory, but theory and practice had a way of diverging when Tyler Brooks was your squad leader. "Listen up, heroes," Tyler announced during the briefing, his voice dripping with authority he hadn't earned. "This is real soldier work, not playground games. We go in hard, we go in fast, and we don't leave anyone behind." His eyes found Maya in the group. That means everyone pulls their weight. No weak links. The plan was textbook. Jessica Walsh and Marcus Thompson would breach the ground floor. The Morrison twins would secure the stairwell. And Maya would cover the rear with David Park. Tyler would coordinate from the center, directing traffic like some kind of tactical genius. What Tyler hadn't counted on was Maya's ability to see patterns that others missed. As they approached the building, Maya noticed something odd about the placement of the simulated civilians on the street. They were positioned too perfectly, creating clear lanes of approach that screamed ambush. She also spotted the telltale glint of paintball weapons in second-story windows, positions that Tyler's plan would walk them directly into. "Brooks," Maya called softly. "I think we should—" "Did I ask for your input, nobody?" Tyler snapped without turning around. "Just watch our 6 and try not to screw anything up." The first part of the operation went smoothly. Jessica and Marcus cleared the ground floor with textbook precision, while the Morrison twins secured their positions. But as soon as Tyler led the main group up the stairwell, the ambush Maya had spotted opened up. Paintball rounds rained down from concealed positions, marking 3 squad members as casualties within seconds. The carefully planned operation dissolved into chaos as instructors activated smoke machines and started shouting conflicting orders in Arabic. Maya found herself separated from the group, pinned down behind a concrete barrier with David Park as simulated gunfire erupted around them. Through the smoke and noise, she could hear Tyler shouting orders that made no tactical sense. "We need to get to the second floor," David said, checking his weapon. "The HVT is supposed to be up there." Maya studied the building through the artificial chaos. The instructors had set this up as a no-win scenario. Every obvious approach was covered by hostile fire. But Maya had grown up in environments where the obvious approach was usually a trap. "Not the second floor," she said, pointing to a maintenance ladder barely visible through the smoke. "Third floor, northwest corner. That's where they'd really keep someone important." David looked skeptical. "How can you possibly know that?" "Because it's where I'd hide if I didn't want to be found." Without waiting for permission, Maya sprinted across the kill zone, using smoke and debris for cover. Paintball rounds whizzed past her head, but her small size and erratic movement made her a difficult target. She reached the ladder and started climbing. David closed behind. The third floor was supposed to be empty according to Tyler's intelligence briefing. Instead, Maya found herself face to face with an instructor wearing the orange vest that marked him as the high-value target. He looked as surprised to see her as she was to find him. "Well, I'll be damned," the instructor said, lowering his weapon. How did you know to look here? Lucky guess, Maya replied, though it had been anything but luck. By the time the exercise ended, Maya and David had successfully completed the mission while the rest of the squad was still trying to follow Tyler's increasingly desperate orders. The debrief session that followed was uncomfortable for everyone except the instructors, who seemed genuinely impressed by the turn of events. Interesting approach, Chen, Captain Reynolds observed, studying his notes. Care to explain how you identified the actual HVT location? Maya glanced at Tyler, whose face had gone through several interesting color changes during the captain's praise. The placement of the decoy positions was too obvious. Real hostiles wouldn't leave that many openings unless they wanted you to take them. And the third floor had the best escape routes, 2 external fire escapes and roof access. Outstanding tactical analysis, Reynolds continued. Brooks, any thoughts on Qian's initiative? Tyler's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he managed to speak. She broke from the team plan. That's not how we operate. The team plan was leading everyone into a kill zone, Maya said quietly. Sometimes you have to adapt. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Reynolds looked between Tyler and Maya like he was watching a chess match between an amateur and a master. Chun's right, the captain finally said. Rigid adherence to flawed plans gets people killed. Flexibility and independent thinking keep them alive. Good work, recruit. As the group filed out of the briefing room, Tyler grabbed Maya's arm hard enough to leave marks. Listen carefully, nobody, he hissed. I don't know what kind of luck you think you're riding, but this is still my squad. You pull a stunt like that again, and I'll make sure you wash out of this program so fast your head will spin. Maya looked down at Tyler's hand on her arm, then back up at his face with an expression that would have made her rattlesnake nervous. Take your hand off me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something in her tone made Tyler step back involuntarily. For just a moment, he caught a glimpse of something dangerous in Maya's eyes, something that suggested she'd been threatened by scarier people than him, and survived. The confrontation might have escalated if Sergeant Hawkins hadn't chosen that moment to appear around the corner. Problem here, recruits? She asked, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made seasoned soldiers straighten their spines. No problem, Sergeant, Tyler said quickly. Just discussing tactical approaches. Hawkins looked between them with the penetrating stare of someone who'd broken up more than her share of testosterone-fueled disputes. Excellent. Then you won't mind discussing those approaches while you both clean the mess hall for the next 3 days, separately. As Tyler stalked off, Hawkins turned to Maya. Walk with me, Chun. They moved in silence across the parade ground, past groups of recruits engaged in various training exercises. Finally, Hawkins spoke. You know, I've been training soldiers for 20 years, and I've learned to spot certain types. There's the natural leader, the team player, the lone wolf, the glory hound. But every once in a while, you get someone who doesn't fit any category. Maya waited, unsure where this was going. You want to know what I see when I look at you, Chun, Hawkins continued. I see someone who's been fighting battles since before she could walk. Someone who's learned to survive in environments that would break most people. That's not necessarily a good thing in a military context. They stopped beside the obstacle course where Maya had struggled so visibly just days before. New recruits were attempting the same challenges, and Maya watched, as several of them failed in exactly the same way as she had. The question, Hawkins said, is whether you're fighting for something, or just fighting because it's all you know how to do. Because if it's the latter, you'll never be more than a survivor. And survivors don't make good soldiers. Maya considered. What's the difference? Soldiers fight for each other. Survivors fight for themselves. One builds something stronger than any individual. The other just endures. That evening, Maya found herself on KP duty alone. Tyler had apparently developed a convenient case of food poisoning, leaving her to scrub industrial-sized pots and pans in solitude. She didn't mind. The rhythmic work gave her time to think about Hawkins's words. She was elbow-deep in soapy water when David Park appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Need some help?" he asked, rolling up his sleeves. "You don't have to, I know." David grabbed a dish towel and started drying the clean pots. "My grandfather had another saying, the measure of a person isn't how they act when people are watching, but what they do when no one's looking." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the quiet broken only by the clatter of cookware and the distant sound of evening formation calls. Finally, David spoke again. "You know Brooks is scared of you, right?" Maya snorted. "Right. The guy who outweighs me by 60 pounds is scared of me. Not physically. He's scared because you make him look ordinary." Tyler's used to being the biggest, strongest, loudest person in the room. That's worked for him his whole life. But you're showing everyone that there are other ways to be strong. Maya set down the pot she'd been scrubbing and really looked at David for the first time. There was something in his quiet confidence that reminded her of the few good people she'd encountered in her chaotic life: social workers who actually cared, teachers who saw potential instead of problems. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. David smiled. "Because I think you forgot that some people are nice just because it's the right thing to do. Not because they want something, not because they're scared, not because they have an angle. Sometimes people are decent because that's who they choose to be." The simplicity of it hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd spent so many years assuming everyone had an agenda that she'd forgotten some people might actually be genuine. "Your grandfather sounds like he was quite a guy," she said finally. "He was. I think he would have liked you." As they finished the last of the dishes, Maya found herself thinking about Hawkins's question. What was she fighting for? Survival had been her default mode for so long that she'd never really considered any other option. But maybe it was time to start. Later that night, as Maya lay in her bunk listening to the quiet breathing of her sleeping barracks mates, she made a decision. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. But for the first time since arriving at Fort Riverside, Maya wasn't just thinking about surviving. She was thinking about what it might mean to actually belong somewhere, outside. The lights of the base twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere in the administrative buildings, decisions were being made that would shape the futures of every recruit in the program. Maya didn't know it yet, but her performance in the urban warfare exercise had caught the attention of people much higher up the chain of command than Captain Reynolds. In a secure office overlooking the parade ground, General Morrison was reviewing after-action reports and making notes in a file marked Chin, MAY classified. The game was about to change in ways Maya couldn't imagine. 3 weeks into the program, Fort Riverside introduced its most grueling challenge yet, a 72-hour field exercise known as the Crucible. Unlike the controlled environment of the base, this would take place in the unforgiving wilderness of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where recruits would face sleep deprivation, limited rations, and scenarios designed to push them beyond their breaking points. Maya stood with the other remaining recruits, 23 of the original 47, as Major Blackwood outlined the exercise parameters. The attrition rate spoke volumes about the program's intensity, but Maya had noticed something interesting about who stayed and who left. It wasn't always the biggest or strongest who survived. "You'll be divided into 3 teams of 7 to 8 members each," Blackwood announced, his weathered face showing no emotion. "Each team will receive different objectives, but all will converge on a final mission that requires inter-team cooperation. Leadership roles will rotate every 8 hours." Maya felt her stomach drop as she heard the team assignments. Team Alpha included Tyler Brooks, Jessica Walsh, and 2 of the Morrison twins. Team Beta was led by Marcus Thompson, with most of the remaining athletic powerhouses. That left Team Charlie the Misfits, as Tyler had loudly dubbed them during breakfast. Team Charlie consisted of Maya, David Park, Elena Rodriguez, a quiet recruit from Texas who'd grown up on a ranch, Kevin Murphy, a former computer programmer, who joined the Army after his startup failed, Amy Chun, no relation to Maya despite the shared surname, a medic from Hawaii, Jackson Lee, a soft-spoken kid from Alabama who could navigate by the stars, and surprisingly, Rachel Morrison, one of the twins who'd apparently requested the transfer. "Wonderful," Kevin muttered as they gathered their gear. "We got the reject pile." "Speak for yourself," Elena said sharply, adjusting her pack with the efficiency of someone who'd been carrying heavy loads since childhood. "I'd rather have people who think than people who just muscle through everything." Rachel Morrison, who despite her military family background had proven to be more thoughtful than her twin sister, nodded in agreement. "My father always said, the most dangerous military units are the ones everyone underestimates." The first objective came 12 hours into the exercise: locate and retrieve intelligence from a crashed aircraft. Deep in the mountains while avoiding enemy patrols, instructors with night vision equipment, and paintball weapons. Most teams would approach this as a straightforward search and rescue operation. Maya had other ideas. As Team Charlie huddled around their topographic map in the fading daylight, she traced her finger along the terrain features. "Everyone's going to take the direct route through this valley," she said, pointing to the obvious approach. "Which means that's where they'll set up the ambushes. So what do you suggest?" Jackson asked, his southern drawl more pronounced when he was tired. Maya pointed to a ridgeline that looked impossibly steep on the map. "We go over the mountain instead of around it. It's harder, but they won't expect it." Kevin stared at the contour lines with growing horror. "That's a 60-degree slope in some places. It'll take us all night. Better than walking into a kill zone," Amy said, studying the map more carefully. "May is right. Every other team will take the easy route." What followed was 6 hours of the most punishing mountain climbing any of them had ever experienced. Maya found herself naturally taking point, her slight frame and low center of gravity giving her advantages on the treacherous terrain. Behind her, the team moved like ghosts through the darkness, each member contributing their unique skills. Elena's ranch background made her an expert at moving quietly through wilderness. Jackson navigated by starlight when their GPS units were compromised by exercise parameters. Amy provided medical support when Kevin twisted his ankle on loose scree. Rachel used her tactical training to scout potential ambush sites. David, as always, provided the steady leadership that kept everyone focused. They reached the crash site 2 hours before sunrise, only to find it already occupied by Team Alpha. Tyler's group had arrived first by taking the direct route, but they'd walked into exactly the kind of ambush Maya had predicted. Half the team had been marked as casualties, leaving Tyler, Jessica, and one Morrison twin to secure the intelligence. Maya studied the situation from their concealed position on the ridge above the crash site. Tyler's reduced team was pinned down by simulated enemy fire, unable to reach the aircraft wreckage where the intelligence package waited. "We could wait for them to withdraw," David suggested quietly. "Or we could help them," Maya replied, surprising everyone including herself. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Help Brooks? After the way he's treated you?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Hawkins's words about fighting for each other versus fighting for yourself. "This isn't about Brooks. It's about completing the mission." What happened next would become legend among Fort Riverside. Instructors. While Team Alpha remained pinned down by conventional tactics, Team Charlie executed a flanking maneuver that utilized the mountain terrain like a three-dimensional chessboard. Elena and Jackson created a diversion on the eastern slope, drawing the instructor's attention with simulated gunfire and movement. Meanwhile, Maya, Amy, And Kevin descended the western face using rappelling techniques that Rachel had improvised from their limited equipment. David and Rachel provided overwatch, marking instructor positions and calling out tactical information. The plan worked flawlessly. By the time the instructors realized they were being flanked from an impossible direction, Team Charlie had reached the aircraft and secured the intelligence package. More importantly, they'd done it without losing a single team member to simulated casualties. Tyler's reaction to being rescued by the reject pile was everything Maya had expected and worse. "We had the situation under control," he snapped as the teams regrouped at the extraction point. "We didn't need your help." "You're welcome," Maya replied mildly, which only seemed to infuriate him more. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Tyler continued, his voice rising. "You can't follow orders, you can't work as part of a team. And now you're showboating to make the rest of us look bad." Something in Maya's expression shifted. The other recruits took an unconscious step back as she turned to face Tyler fully. "You want to know what I can't do, Brooks?" Maya's voice was deadly quiet. "I can't watch good soldiers get picked off because their leader's ego is more important than their lives. I can't pretend that following a bad plan is more important than completing the mission. And I sure as hell can't stand here and listen to you blame everyone else for your own failures." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the instructors, who'd been observing from a discreet distance, seemed to lean in to hear what would happen next. Tyler stepped closer, using his size advantage to intimidate. "You think you're special, nobody? You think one lucky break makes you a soldier?" "I think," Maya said, not backing down an inch, "that I'm tired of pretending you're in charge just because you're loud." What happened next surprised everyone, especially Maya. Rachel Morrison, whose family had produced 3 generations of decorated officers, stepped forward to stand beside her. "Chun's right," Rachel said simply. "Tyler, you're a decent soldier when you're following orders, but you're a terrible leader. You make decisions based on your ego instead of tactical reality." One by one, the other members of Team Charlie moved to stand with Maya. Even some members of the other teams began to shift uncomfortably, clearly questioning their own leadership dynamics. Tyler looked around the group with growing desperation. "This is mutiny. This is exactly the kind of individual thinking that gets people killed in real combat." "No," came a new voice from the edge of the clearing. "This is leadership." Everyone turned to see Captain Reynolds emerging from the tree line, followed by 2 other instructors. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he'd been listening to the entire exchange. "Chun," Reynolds continued, "you've just demonstrated something that can't be taught in any manual. You identified a tactical problem, developed an innovative solution, executed it flawlessly, and did it all while supporting your fellow soldiers. That's not individual thinking, that's command thinking." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "Sir, I wasn't trying to what? Show initiative? Display tactical brilliance? Demonstrate the kind of selfless leadership that keeps soldiers alive?" Reynolds smiled. "Chun, you've just completed your first command evaluation. Congratulations." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. This hadn't been just another training exercise, it had been a test of leadership potential. And Maya had passed without even realizing she was being evaluated. As the teams prepared for extraction, Maya found herself walking beside Rachel Morrison, who'd surprised everyone by choosing to support her over Tyler. "Why?" Maya asked simply. Rachel was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "My father always told me that real leaders aren't the ones who demand to be followed. They're the ones people choose to follow, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Your father sounds like a wise man." "He is. He's also the one who designed this exercise." Maya stopped walking. "Your father is ... General Morrison and Maya?" Rachel smiled. "I think he's been watching you very carefully." As the helicopters arrived to extract the teams from the Mountain exercise. Maya felt a fundamental shift in how the other recruits looked at her. She was no longer nobody. She was someone who'd proven herself under pressure, someone who could be trusted with lives and missions. But Maya also sensed that this was just the beginning. The real tests were still ahead, and somewhere in the chain of command, decisions were being made that would determine not just her future, but the futures of everyone around her. The game had changed, and Maya Chun was no longer just a player. She was becoming a piece that could change the entire board. The knock on Maya's barracks door came at 0200 hours, 3 days after the mountain exercise. She jolted awake from dreams of rappelling down impossible cliffs, her heart hammering as she recognized the distinctive pattern. 3 sharp raps, pause, 2 more. Official business. Sergeant Hawkins stood in the hallway, her expression unreadable in the dim emergency lighting. Chun, get dressed. Full dress uniform. You have 5 minutes. Maya's bunkmates stirred restlessly, but nobody asked questions. Middle of the night summons usually meant one of 2 things. You were in serious trouble, or something important was happening. Either way, questions would only slow things down. As Maya pulled on her uniform with practiced efficiency, her mind raced through possible scenarios. Had she violated some regulation during the mountain exercise? Was this about the confrontation with Tyler? Or worse, had something happened to one of her teammates? Time, Hawkins announced from the doorway. They walked in silence across the darkened base, past sleeping barracks and empty training facilities. Their destination wasn't the administrative building where disciplinary meetings usually took place, but the headquarters complex, an imposing structure of brick and glass that housed the base's senior command staff. Maya had never been inside the building before. The marble floors and oil paintings of distinguished military leaders created an atmosphere of tradition and authority that made her feel like an intruder. Her boots echoed too loudly in the hushed corridors. They stopped outside an office door, marked General Morrison, Commanding Officer. Hawkins knocked once and waited for permission to enter. Come. The voice from inside was calm, measured, with the kind of authority that came from decades of making life and death decisions. Maya felt her mouth go dry. Sir, Hawkins announced as they entered. Recruit Chun, as requested. The office was larger than Maya had expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the parade ground. Awards and commendations covered one wall, while another displayed photographs of General Morrison with various military and political leaders. But what struck Maya most was how normal he seemed sitting behind his desk. Just a man in his 60s with silver hair and tired eyes. Thank you, Sergeant. That will be all. Hawkins departed, leaving Maya alone with the most powerful person at Fort Riverside. She stood at attention, staring straight ahead, trying not to let her nervousness show. General Morrison studied her for a long moment before speaking. Relax, Chen. This isn't a disciplinary meeting. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Please sit. Maya remained standing. Sir, I prefer to stand. A slight smile crossed Morrison's features. Of course you do. Very well. He opened a thick folder on his desk. Maya's personnel file, she realized. Tell me about Kentucky. The question caught her completely off guard. Sir, your home state. I've read your file, of course, but files only tell part of the story. What was it like growing up there? Maya hesitated, unsure where this was leading. Difficult, sir. I moved around a lot. Foster homes, group facilities, not much stability. And yet here you are. What made you join the Army? Honestly? It was either this or jail. The recruiter found me at a truck stop, said I had potential. Maya paused, then added, I thought he was lying. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Sergeant First Class Williams. Good man, excellent judge of character. He was right about your potential, though I suspect even he didn't realize how right. The general stood and moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Do you know why this facility exists, Chun? To train elite soldiers, sir. Close, but not quite accurate. Fort Riverside exists to identify and develop a very specific type of warrior individuals who can think independently under pressure, who can lead when leadership is needed, and who can make the hard decisions that others cannot or will not make. He turned to face her. We call them force multipliers. One such individual can be worth an entire platoon in the right circumstances. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Your performance over the past month has been remarkable. Not your physical scores, those are mediocre at best. Not your weapons proficiency adequate, but unremarkable. What's caught our attention is your tactical thinking and your ability to inspire others to perform beyond their perceived limitations. Morrison returned to his desk and withdrew a single sheet of paper from Maya's file. The urban warfare exercise. You identified the correct HVT location when seasoned soldiers missed it, the mountain operation. You executed a rescue mission that our tactical experts didn't think was possible with available resources. And perhaps most importantly, you did both while elevating the performance of your entire team. I was just trying to complete the mission, sir. Exactly. Morrison's eyes sharpened. You have an instinctive understanding of something that takes most officers years to learn. The mission comes first, but the mission can't succeed without the people who execute it. That balance between objective and personnel is what separates good soldiers from great leaders. Maya felt overwhelmed by the praise, unsure how to respond. Sir, I appreciate the recognition, but I'm just trying to survive the program like everyone else. No, Chun, you're not. And that's why you're here. Morrison moved to a wall safe behind his desk, entering a complex combination before withdrawing a sealed envelope. The paper was heavy, official, with multiple classification stamps. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. There are perhaps 12 people at this facility who know what I'm going to share with you. Maya's heart rate spiked. Sir, maybe I shouldn't. Fort Riverside's elite training program is actually a cover for something much more specialized. We're developing rapid response teams for situations that conventional military units can't handle, scenarios that require individuals who can think creatively under extreme pressure and adapt to changing circumstances without traditional command structure. The general opened the envelope and withdrew several documents. These teams operate under special authorization, often in small groups or even individually. They require a different kind of soldier, one who can function as both warrior and strategist, follower and leader, depending on what the situation demands. Maya stared at the papers without really seeing them. Are you saying? I'm saying that your performance has identified you as a candidate for one of these specialized roles. The designation is classified, but informally we refer to these individuals as Iron Eagles. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Iron Eagle. She'd heard rumors among the recruits about secret programs and special designations, but she'd assumed they were just myths designed to motivate competition. Sir, I don't understand. I'm nobody special. I'm just a kid from Kentucky who got lucky. Stop. Morrison's voice carried absolute authority. Don't diminish what you've accomplished. Do you think luck rescued Team Alpha from that ambush? Do you think coincidence identified the correct HVT location? You have abilities that can't be taught, Chun. They can be refined, directed, developed, but not created. Maya's mind reeled as she tried to process the implications. What would this mean if I accepted additional training, far beyond what standard recruits receive? Specialized skills in tactics, languages, technology, psychology, and ultimately, assignments that would place you in situations where failure isn't just personal, it could affect national security. The weight of responsibility was staggering. Maya had spent her entire life just trying to survive, and now someone was suggesting she could be trusted with missions that affected thousands of people. I need time to think. No, Morrison interrupted. You don't. Maya Chun, who needs time to think, is the same person who spent 18 years reacting to circumstances beyond her control. The Iron Eagle I've been observing makes decisions based on available information and accepts responsibility for the consequences. Morrison was right, and Maya knew it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was being offered the chance to protect others the way she'd always wished someone would protect her. What's the next step? She asked. Morrison smiled, and for the first time since entering his office, Maya saw genuine warmth in his expression. The next step is returning to your regular training schedule and pretending this conversation never happened. To your fellow recruits, your instructors, even your closest friends, you remain just another candidate trying to complete the program. For how long? Until we're certain you're ready. Until we're certain you can handle what comes next. Morrison's expression grew serious again. Because what comes next, Chun, will make everything you've experienced so far look like preparation. The real test hasn't even begun. As Maya prepared to leave, Morrison called her back. One more thing. The designation comes with a warning. Iron Eagles operate in the spaces between conventional military doctrine and necessity. Sometimes that means making choices that others would question. Sometimes it means carrying burdens that no one else can understand. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Maya thought about the foster homes, the group facilities, the countless times she'd been forced to make impossible decisions just to survive another day. Sir, I've been carrying burdens my whole life. At least now they'd mean something. Morrison nodded slowly. Then welcome to the program, Iron Eagle. Try not to let it go to your head. As Maya walked back across the darkened base, her mind buzzed with questions and possibilities. She was no longer just trying to complete basic training. She was being prepared for something far more significant. But first, she had to get through the remaining weeks of the program without anyone discovering her new status. That meant continuing to face Tyler Brooks's hostility, maintaining her friendships with David and the others, and pretending that nothing had changed, when in reality, everything had changed. Maya Chun was no longer nobody. She was Iron Eagle. And the real adventure was just beginning. The last 2 weeks of the program brought challenges that pushed every remaining recruit to their absolute limits. Advanced psychological warfare, multi-day survival exercises, and combat scenarios that blurred the line between training and reality. Maya moved through it all with a new sense of purpose, though she was careful not to let her Iron Eagle status show. The hardest part wasn't the physical challenges, it was maintaining relationships with people who didn't know her secret. David Park continued to offer his quiet friendship, unaware that Maya was being prepared for missions he couldn't imagine. Rachel Morrison shared tactical insights, not knowing that Maya was receiving advanced briefings from her father. Even Tyler Brooks, whose hostility had evolved into grudging respect, had no idea that the girl he'd once called nobody was already operating on a completely different level. The final exercise was announced on a gray Wednesday morning that felt heavy with anticipation. Captain Reynolds stood before the 18 remaining recruits, less than half the original group, with an expression that suggested something significant was about to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your graduation exercise. For the next 72 hours, you will participate in a joint training operation with active duty Special Forces units. Your performance will determine not just whether you complete this program, but what assignments you receive upon commissioning. Maya felt a chill of recognition. This wasn't just a graduation exercise, it was her final evaluation for the Iron Eagle program. Somewhere among the Special Forces personnel would be her future teammates, watching to see if she was truly ready for what came next. The scenario was complex. A terrorist cell had captured a NATO intelligence officer in a hostile urban environment. 3 teams of recruits would work alongside Special Forces advisors to locate and extract the target while minimizing civilian casualties. What made it particularly challenging was that the hostile environment was a live training facility, populated with actors playing civilians, some of whom were actually enemy operatives. Maya found herself assigned to Team 1 alongside David, Rachel, Elena, and 2 other recruits she'd come to respect during the program. Their Special Forces advisor was a grizzled sergeant named Coleman who looked like he'd seen combat on every continent. "Listen up, future officers," Coleman announced during their initial briefing. "This is as close to real-world operations as training gets. The weapons fire paint rounds, but everything else, the stress, the confusion, the life-or-death decision-making, that's all genuine. Some of you will excel under this pressure, others will crack. Let's find out which category you belong to." The exercise began at dawn with intelligence gathering. Maya's team was responsible for infiltrating the mock city and identifying the location where the hostage was being held. The other teams would provide support and execute the actual rescue once the target was located. As they moved through the urban terrain, Maya noticed something that made her skin crawl. The civilian actors were positioned too perfectly, their movements too coordinated. This wasn't just a training exercise, it was an ambush designed to test how the recruits would react when everything went wrong. "Something's off," she whispered to David as they took cover behind a concrete barrier. "What do you mean?" Maya pointed to a group of civilians crossing the street in perfect synchronization. "Watch their movement patterns. They're not random. Pedestrians, they're moving with military precision." David studied the scene more carefully, and his expression grew grim. "You think some of the civilians are actually hostiles?" "I think all of the civilians are hostiles," Maya replied. "This whole scenario is a trap." Before David could respond, the attack began. Paint rounds erupted from concealed positions as the civilian actors dropped their disguises and revealed military-grade weapons. Within seconds, the carefully planned exercise dissolved into chaos as the recruits found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. Maya's training kicked in automatically. She assessed the tactical situation, identified escape routes, and began coordinating her team's response. But something felt different this time. Instead of just trying to survive, she found herself thinking 3 moves ahead, anticipating enemy actions and developing countermeasures. "Elena, suppressing fire on that window," she called out, her voice carrying clearly over the simulated gunfire. "David, take Rachel and circle around to the east. I need you to create a diversion in 60 seconds. "What about you?" David asked. "I'm going to get us out of this kill zone." What happened next would be analyzed and discussed by Fort Riverside instructors for years to come. While the other teams were pinned down and taking heavy casualties, Maya executed a tactical withdrawal that utilized the urban environment like a 3-dimensional chessboard. She led her team through a series of interconnected buildings, using maintenance tunnels and rooftop access points that weren't marked on any of the official maps. Her ability to see patterns and anticipate enemy movements allowed them to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. But Maya wasn't just running, she was gathering intelligence. As they moved through the facility, she cataloged enemy positions, identified weak points in their defensive setup, and developed a plan for turning the exercise around. 20 minutes into what should have been a complete rout, Maya's voice crackled over the team radio. "All units, this is Team 1. We have eyes on the hostage location and a plan for extraction." The response from the other teams was immediate disbelief. "Team 1, this is impossible. The hostage location wasn't supposed to be identified until Phase 2. "Copy that," Maya replied calmly. "Sometimes the enemy doesn't follow our timeline." What followed was the most audacious rescue operation in Fort Riverside history. Using intelligence gathered during their retreat, Maya coordinated a 3-team assault that hit the enemy from directions they hadn't anticipated. Her team provided overwatch while the other groups executed the actual extraction, but it was Maya's tactical coordination that made the impossible mission succeed. Hawk Morrison nodded agreement. Rachel told me you have an ability to see patterns that others miss. In a city like Karabad, where nothing is what it appears to be, that skill could be the difference between success and catastrophe. The planning session that followed was unlike anything Maya had experienced. Instead of rigid military hierarchies, the team operated as a collective of experts, each contributing their specialized knowledge to develop an operation that was part rescue mission, part espionage thriller, and part mathematical puzzle. The challenge was staggering. The compound was heavily guarded, surrounded by civilian populations that couldn't be endangered, and located in a city where every authority figure was potentially compromised. Traditional assault tactics would fail. Stealth infiltration would be detected by sophisticated security systems. And they had less than 72 hours before intelligence suggested Dr. Volkov would be moved to a location they might never find. Maya studied the holographic display, letting her mind wander through possibilities that conventional thinking would dismiss. The compound's defenses were designed to repel external attacks, but what if the threat came from an unexpected direction? The sewage treatment facility, she said suddenly, pointing to a structure half a mile from the target compound. Torres looked confused. What about it? It's connected to the compound by underground utility tunnels that aren't shown on any security schematic. If we could access the facility, we might be able to approach the compound from below. Santos pulled up city planning records on her tablet. The tunnels exist, but they're monitored by motion sensors and camera systems. Which is where Dr. Kim comes in, Maya continued, her mind racing through the possibilities. If she could pose as a city sanitation inspector, she could access the treatment facility and disable the security systems for a specific window of time. Webb studied the compound's layout more carefully. Even if we got inside, extraction would be impossible through the same route. We'd need an alternative exit strategy. Maya smiled, feeling the familiar rush that came when seemingly impossible problems began to reveal solutions. That's where Hawk and Torres come in. What if the extraction wasn't from ground level at all? The plan that emerged over the next 6 hours was audacious, complex, and completely unlike anything in standard military doctrine. It required precise timing, flawless execution, and the kind of coordination that could only work with a team that trusted each other absolutely. Maya would infiltrate the compound through the utility tunnels while Dr. Kim created a distraction at the sewage facility. Webb would provide underwater extraction through a storm drain system that connected to a river running behind the compound. Santos would coordinate electronic warfare to blind the compound surveillance systems during the critical moments. Hawk would provide overwatch from a building 3 blocks away, ready to eliminate any threats that emerged. And Torres would execute an aerial pickup from the river, using a helicopter disguised as a medical evacuation flight. It's insane, Colonel Cross observed after reviewing the complete operation plan. Yes, ma'am, Maya agreed. But it's also the only approach they won't be expecting. The infiltration began at 0300 local time, with Maya descending into utility. Tunnels that smelled like decades of neglect and industrial waste. Her modified combat gear included breathing apparatus, waterproof communications equipment, and weapons designed for close-quarters combat in confined spaces. The tunnels were a maze of pipes, cables, and maintenance walkways that seemed to have been designed by someone with a grudge against human navigation. Maya moved through them with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned that rushing led to mistakes, and mistakes led to people dying. Dr. Kim's distraction at the sewage facility worked perfectly, a contamination alarm that required immediate attention from the compound security systems. Santos used the resulting confusion to inject malware into the surveillance network, creating blind spots that would last exactly 17 minutes. Maya emerged from the utility tunnels into the compound's basement level, an area filled with generators, water treatment equipment, and storage rooms that weren't marked on any official blueprint. The building's construction was more complex than the satellite imagery had suggested, with multiple sublevels and emergency exits that would complicate navigation. Finding Dr. Volkov required searching 3 different detention areas before Maya located her in a converted laboratory on the building's 2nd floor. The scientist was unconscious but alive, showing signs of sedation rather than physical harm. "Dr. Volkov," Maya whispered, checking for response. "My name is Lieutenant Chun. We're here to get you out." Volkov's eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. They made me work on the viral samples. I tried to sabotage the research, but save the explanations for later, Maya said, helping Volkov to her feet. "Can you walk?" "I think so. But there are guards." "Not anymore." Came Hawk's voice through Maya's earpiece. 2 sentries down, corridor clear for the next 90 seconds. Maya helped Volkov through the compound's maze-like interior, following a route that Santos had mapped using the building's compromised security cameras. They encountered no resistance until they reached the ground floor, where Maya's earpiece crackled with urgent warnings. "Multiple hostiles converging on your position," Hawk reported. "They know you're there." Maya's mind raced through alternatives. The original extraction route was compromised, and they were still 2 floors above the basement level where Webb was waiting with underwater extraction gear. "Change of plans," Maya announced to the team. "We're going up instead of down." "Up?" Torres's voice was incredulous. "Shun, the roof is 40 feet above ground level with no helicopter access." "Trust me," Maya replied, already moving toward a service stairwell. "Can you position the helicopter over the river behind the building?" "Affirmative, but I don't see how. There's a zip-line system connecting this building to the water treatment facility across the river," Maya explained as she helped Volkov climb the stairs. "Industrial maintenance access. If we can reach the roof... What followed was the most terrifying 2 minutes of Maya's military career. While hostile forces stormed through the building below them, she and Dr. Volkov rappelled down a maintenance cable that stretched across 80 feet of empty air, suspended 40 feet above a river that might or might not be deep enough to survive a fall. Torres's helicopter appeared just as they reached the midpoint of the cable, its downdraft creating turbulence that threatened to shake them loose. Webb was already in the water below, ready to execute underwater rescue if everything went wrong. But everything didn't go wrong. Maya and Volkov reached the treatment facility roof just as the cable snapped under their combined weight. Torres's helicopter swept in for extraction 30 seconds later, whisking them away from a compound that was now crawling with hostile forces. The debriefing took place in the same nondescript facility where the mission had been planned. But the atmosphere was completely different. Colonel Cross reviewed the after-action reports with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with genuine amazement. "Dr. Volkov is safe. The viral research has been destroyed, and the Crimson Hand's biological weapons program has been set back by at least 5 years, Cross announced. The mission was a complete success with 0 casualties. Maya felt the familiar mixture of relief and exhaustion that followed high-stakes operations. But more than that, she felt something she'd never experienced before, the satisfaction of protecting innocent people through skill rather than just surviving through stubbornness. "There will be other missions," Cross continued. "Other situations where conventional approaches won't work, and Iron Eagle teams represent the only viable option. Lieutenant Chun, your performance today confirms that you're ready for whatever comes next." As the team dispersed to their respective assignments, Maya found herself walking through the facility's corridors with a new understanding of her role in the world. She was no longer the girl who'd been called nobody at Fort Riverside, but she wasn't entirely comfortable with being called a hero either. She was something else, something that existed in the spaces between official recognition and practical necessity. She was someone who made hard decisions so others didn't have to, who operated in gray areas where conventional rules didn't apply, who protected people who would never know her name. Maya Chung was Iron Eagle, and as she walked into the darkness, beyond the facility's gates, she knew that her real story was just beginning. Somewhere in the world, other impossible situations were developing. Other innocent people were in danger, and other missions were waiting for someone with the courage to see solutions where others saw only problems. The night was full of possibilities, and Maya Chun was ready for all of them. Years later, when military historians tried to trace the origins of the Iron Eagle program, they would find only fragmentary records and classified documents that raised more questions than they answered. But occasionally, in the margins of those documents, they would find references to a recruit who'd arrived at Fort Riverside as nobody and left as something much more dangerous. They never found her real name, but they didn't need to. The legend was enough. Iron Eagle was enough. And in a world where impossible situations required impossible solutions, sometimes a legend was exactly what the world needed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.